Hello and welcome to episode 128 of Glitch Report. My name is GnittWitt. Thank you so much for joining me on the program today. Rest in peace, David Lynch. I wanted to take a moment to pay respects to the man. Since last week's episode, we have lost David Lynch. And if you haven't had the chance, might I just say before we get started, if you haven't had the chance, you should check out the works of David Lynch. That's I know that's bold, like a huge recommendation. Usually I'm out here being like, hey, you should play this, or you should play that, or you should do video games. But R.I.P. David Lynch. I've been watching a lot of David Lynch work, even before the passing of the man. So it still feels a little raw. I guess I would say it still feels a little raw. And also, I don't know about everywhere else, but I use a lot of Instagram threads, because fuck Twitter and fuck Elon Musk. Double fuck Elon Musk for a variety of reasons. And not to get on a tangent too much, but like Elon Musk just seems like shit at the bottom of a shoe sort of thing. Like he doesn't even seem worthy of any sort of love, admiration, or respect. He just seems like an awful person. That being said, fuck Twitter, fuck Elon Musk. So I spent a lot of time on Instagram threads, and I don't know if it's just the threads algorithm or what is going on over there, but it has been nonstop David Lynch for the last week. And usually like an algorithm at some point will be like, hey, have you thought about looking at, gimmick cooking videos on the internet? Hey, this guy made a fucked up looking cake using Oreo cookies or whatever the hell's going on some other part of the internet. And maybe it's just what I've curated, but everyone that I'm interacting with on Instagram threads for the most part, I guess I should just call it threads. I shouldn't just say Instagram threads, but anyways, most of the people that I've been interacting with on threads seem to be really cool and big fans of David Lynch. So that's why it's still, and I've spent a lot of time on threads, I'll admit, which might explain why I keep saying RIP David Lynch, even though it has been about a week. But we have a huge amount of news to get to as far as talking video games. This is not a David Lynch podcast as much as we could try to do that, but we're not going to. This is going to be a podcast about video games, damn it. We've done 127 podcasts about video games. We're going to do another one, and then we'll probably do some more after that. But hang with us here as we cover the latest and greatest gaming news from this week. Biggest one right out of the top, which is something that I kind of covered last week before the real announcement happened, is Nintendo has officially revealed the Nintendo Switch 2. It was shown for the first time in a trailer published by Nintendo. And you might be thinking, wow, we're going to show off everything there is to know about the console. It's going to cover damn near everything under the sun. And that is not the case when it comes to Nintendo Switch 2. This video that Nintendo put out was one single video, and it was 2 minutes and 22 seconds. It is not everything. It is not everything. But let's kind of cover what they showed. This is a rundown, basically a description of the trailer from Video Games Chronicles. As always, shout out to Video Games Chronicles. And what the good folks over at VGC have kind of put it is that the Switch 2 looks very similar to the original console with the same layout of the screen, surrounded by two Joy-Con controllers. However, there seems to be a magnet that is connecting the Switch together, which should be something that is less likely to loosen over time. The Switch had this, like the original Switch, the way the Joy-Con snapped into place was a physical kind of plastic mechanism that can kind of rattle and kind of loosen over time. So they've tried to correct that. Sorry, I'm just trying to catch up on the article here. I watched the trailer. There's not much to look at, but I'm trying to like use their words as a guide to describe it. So that's a magnet now that's kind of connecting the sides together. They've also flipped the color grading of the Nintendo Switch. So before it was kind of a black accent with the blue and red Joy-Con controllers. Now it is a red accent on the right analog stick and a blue accent on the left analog stick, and the rest of the console is black. They also showed off that they've added some additional buttons to the tops of the Joy-Cons, because remember, the thing about the Nintendo Switch is you can play it handheld mode. I feel like I'm just kind of pitching this all over again for Nintendo's sake. You can play it in handheld mode. You can take it out of handheld mode, put it in the dock, which connects it to the TV. You can then take the two Joy-Con controllers that were on the side of the Switch for handheld mode, mount it into a controller frame, and then use that controller for the Switch for TV mode. But also, you can take the Joy-Cons off individually and use them as controllers. Most games are only going to need one analog stick, a handful of face buttons, and then maybe a shoulder button or two. But what seems like what they've added is an extra button to that Joy-Con on the tops of them once you've removed them from the console. The other thing they kind of showed off is the idea of using the Joy-Cons as a mouse. They take the Joy-Con off and they kind of slide it all across a table, trying to insinuate that you can use it as some sort of mouse, which is interesting. Maybe they bring back Mario Paint. They should probably bring back Mario Paint. Let me say this: what the hell is the point of having a console that offers a mouse-like experience if you're not going to bring back Mario Paint? So that's what they should do. Whether they do it or not, who can say? They didn't confirm a release date. They didn't confirm a price. The only thing they said is that there will be a Nintendo Direct focusing on the Switch 2 April 2nd. So we got a ways to go before any of this, starts to become concrete. There's always the possibility that leaks continue to happen at a rapid rate, but I have a feeling that if this is a April 2nd, like full on, here's everything, here's the games, here's the hardware, here's the price reveal, that I don't think the Switch 2 is too far away from that April 2nd Nintendo Direct. That's what I'm thinking. Like maybe by the end of April, that Switch 2 is out. We'll find out. We always do, but we are January 22nd. We have some months to go before we get to February, March, April, like 2.5 months ish, 2.5 months ish, give or take, before we find out more. Here's what I'll say. They also showed off a Mario Kart game. They didn't say what it was called. They didn't say anything, but they did show a Mario Kart game. One of the things that was pointed out in that Mario Kart showcase that they had, they redid my man Donkey Kong. They've redesigned Donkey Kong. And I am not an expert in how Donkey Kong has looked over the years. I do know that Donkey Kong, as he was existing in the video game Donkey Kong, is now an older Donkey Kong that we have renamed to Cranky Kong, and Donkey Kong Jr., who was in the arcade game Donkey Kong Jr. Was Donkey Kong Jr. an arcade game? Listen, I'm referring to stuff that is well beyond my years. Not Donkey Kong Jr. is 1982. Okay, so hear me out. Donkey Kong. All right, Donkey Kong from Donkey Kong is still alive and with us today, but he is a older Donkey Kong that we now refer to as Cranky Kong, and Donkey Kong Jr. from the arcade game Donkey Kong Jr. is now who we refer to as Donkey Kong. He is the son of the original Donkey Kong. So it's all very confusing. I understand that, like, some people are really just scratching their heads here. But yeah, that's where we're at. That's where we're at with Donkey Kong, is a reimagined Donkey Kong. He's got some eye stuff going on. He kind of looks more like the Donkey Kong from that Mario movie, which makes sense. I mean, when that movie came out, one of the first things, that people started saying was like, some of these characters look a little bit different. Some of the voice acting is a little bit different. What is the chance that, Nintendo kind of brings these concepts together from the movies and the games to create a more consistent presentation and interpretation of Mario? And it seems like they're slowly starting to do that with this Nintendo Switch 2 looking Mario Kart game. The other thing they said, which is really nice, that they confirmed that the Switch 2 will be backwards compatible with the original Switch, saying it will play both physical and digital Switch games. Now, one thing they said is that certain Nintendo Switch games may not be supported or fully compatible with Switch 2, but I would guess that has to do with games that require specific accessories that may not be supported on the Nintendo Switch 2, such as the Nintendo Labo stuff, as well as the Ring Fit Adventure game, but we don't know just yet. What else we got? Oh, we got some Sony news. We're always talking about, kind of Sony's commitment to the live service games, these online multiplayer live service experience games that are rotten with microtransactions and battle passes and seasonal updates and additional content and all of that stuff. This idea that Sony wants to move away, or at least diversify their portfolio enough, they are not just known for AAA single player action adventure games, right? What if we took everyone's favorite characters from God of War and made it a multiplayer game? Now you might be thinking, GnittWitt, if history is anything to go off of, they already made a multiplayer God of War game back on the PlayStation 3, but we don't talk about that game. We don't talk about God of War Ascension, so forget all that. What if instead they took the rebooted God of War games that we know now and love and made that into a multiplayer experience that was a live service offering? Well, that's what they were doing, but it turns out that the teams over at Bluepoint and Bend have learned that their live service PS5 games were canceled at the same time as everyone else. Jason Schreier has now questioned the claim. This is an update from the article, basically saying that people were informed at those studios before the article came out, but basically last week, Jason Schreier kind of confirmed by a Sony spokesperson that Sony had canceled live service games in development at Bend Studio and Bluepoint Games. Now, Schreier's articles didn't describe the games in detail, but he then took to Blue Sky to confirm that the game that Bluepoint was working on was a live service God of War game. Now, according to journalist Jeff Grubb in his latest Game Mess morning show, it appears that the staff working on the game found out about the cancellation when the report was published. This is something that Jason Schreier disagrees with, saying that they actually found out before that article came out. Jeff Grubb said, "I looked into this a bit. Yeah, all this is true. The two studios found out at the same time as everyone else, so people will be going into work today wondering, hey, what are we doing next? And when they're going to have what they're going to have to do next very likely is pitch something to Sony, and the landscape of that has changed pretty drastically." Now, Grubb suggested that both studios will have a harder time proposing a new idea to Sony because its closure of numerous live service titles means it's not currently clear what types of new games it's going to greenlight. He said, "A couple years ago, you'd bring to PlayStation your pitch. That is, it's a live service game. We know you want to hear that. And can we use the God of War IP? We know you want to hear that." And then they get the green light, and then they get the budget, they get the funding, they can grow their studio, hire more people. The people working there are safe. Now they have to go back to the drawing board and come up with a pitch that PlayStation wants to hear when no one really knows what they want to hear. So it's a rough situation. Sony spokesperson confirmed that both games had been canceled, quote, following a recent review, but stressed that neither studio would be closed down as a result of the cancellations. quote, Bend and Bluepoint are highly accomplished teams who are valued members of the PlayStation Studios family, and we are currently working closely with each studio to determine what are the next projects. And that was something that they told Bloomberg last week. Now, in case you are curious, if you want a little history lesson here, and I don't mind giving a history lesson every now and then, let's kind of cover what Bend Bend and Bluepoint. Okay, so for context, here are the games that Sony Bend had been working on. The last game that they put out, the last game that Sony Bend put out was Days Gone. So, and that was in 2019. They also helped get that game out on PC. So if in case you're wondering where Bend ranks in the Sony pantheon, these are the people that put out Days Gone. Prior to that, they did do some work on the PlayStation Vita Uncharted games. Uncharted Fight for Fortune, which was a Uncharted card game, and Uncharted Golden Abyss on PlayStation Vita as well. But there was a huge gap, 2012 to 2019, between that Uncharted card game that they put on a PlayStation Vita and the Days Gone game. If we move over to Bluepoint, a better track record for a variety of reasons, though one of the biggest reasons why Bend has had more success, and that's not to discredit the people working at Bend, but they have mostly done remakes and remasters of classic video games. Bend, for example, worked on the God of War collection for PlayStation 3, which was, if I remember correctly, a remaster of God of War 1 and 2, which were the PS2 games coming to PS3. They also did Eco and the Shadow of Colossus collection. They worked on the Uncharted Nathan Drake collection. They worked on Gravity Rush Remastered. They also worked on the remake of, the remake of Shadow of Colossus. They also worked on the remake of Demon's Souls. Demon's Souls, if you remember, was a launch title for PlayStation 5. And they have also worked as a support studio. They most recently provided support for God of War Ragnarok, both the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 versions of that game. So in a sense, like, Bend is potentially poised to do whatever the hell Sony wants them to do next. If that means, fuck it, you're going to remaster Ratchet and Clank, or you're going to do a remake of Infamous or whatever, they're maybe a little more poised to get something out the door potentially faster because of how familiar they are with kind of working on games that aren't theirs necessarily, whereas Bend has done a lot of original work. And I'm not saying that Bend's work is trash. I am just saying that they have had potentially a slightly rockier track record than Bluepoint has. Regardless of what happens, I hope that everybody lands on their feet. I hope that everyone continues to work on games that they're passionate about, games that they love, and that Sony starts to have a better understanding of what games they're actually looking for, especially if live service is not their thing. If they've started to realize that, like, you know what, we don't want to do a bunch of online multiplayer games. Now, speaking of Sony potentially realizing that online multiplayer games are not their thing, NCSoft's Horizon MMORPG has also seemingly been canceled. One of the two Horizon multiplayer projects has been canceled. Now, this is according to South Korean news site MTN News, that said that NCSoft has canceled projects being worked on at 3 studios, codenamed HJ and Pantera. It is not codenamed HJ. It is not codenamed Handjob. It is codenamed H, codenamed J, and codenamed Pantera. Get your mind out of the gutter. Although the story doesn't give any further information on the project, it's been reported that for some time that Project H was the code name for the MMORPG based on Horizon's franchise. Now, according to the report, it seems that Project 8 has ceased development, with the developers being previously tied to the project now leaving NCSoft. It's reported that the developers who didn't leave following the cancellation have been moved on to different projects across the company. Now, the company signed a strategic global business partnership with Sony, that company being NCSoft, back in 2023, following reports that Sony and NCSoft had struck a deal to create an MMORPG based on Sony's franchise. At the time, Jim Ryan said, partnering with NCSoft advances our strategy to expand beyond console and broaden PlayStation's reach to a wider audience. Like SIE, NCSoft shares a similar vision in creating high-quality, impactful entertainment experiences for players everywhere. And together, we're excited to collaborate to push the boundaries of gaming further. It is believed that the project may have been a victim of layoffs that took place at the company in October. VGC contacted NCSoft for further clarification. Images of Project H, or Skyline as it was referred to internally, appeared online last year. This is separate from a multiplayer Horizon title that is being developed internally at Sony. Now, Guerrilla announced in December of 2022 that it was working on an online game set in the Horizon universe, featuring a new cast of characters and a unique stylized look. So that's kind of it. That's kind of it. Which begs the question: if they're canceling the externally developed Horizon game, how much hope do we have that that multiplayer game that's being made internally by Guerrilla, like, is that ever going to see the light of day? Can I be honest? If I'm being honest, I have my doubts. I have my doubts for a variety of reasons. Because if Sony is willing to cancel this, or potentially they don't have as much riding on it because, NCSoft is providing funding or whatever, what's stopping them from pulling the rug under Guerrilla as well? And also, just hear me out. Uncharted had competitive multiplayer and cooperative multiplayer in the game, right? Starting with Uncharted 2, 3 and 4, they all had multiplayer in it. The Last of Us Part 1 also had multiplayer in it, right? So, if, Killzone as well, but, Killzone, whatever. What is to stop Guerrilla from finding a way to implement some of the ideas from their Horizon multiplayer game into a proper Horizon 3 in order to not waste time and resources on work that never sees the light of day? Because if I'm Sony right now, even though I am not screaming, like, I just finished Horizon Zero Dawn Remastered, and I'll talk about that later on in the show, but I just finished that game, and last year I had played through Forbidden West. So I am not personally dying for more Horizon in any way, shape, or form. I've thought about going back and playing Forbidden West because I prefer the gameplay of Forbidden West over Zero Dawn, and I could just ignore the story, fuck off in the open world, and do whatever. But in terms of, like, God, I can't help but, wait in anticipation for the conclusion to Aloy's story and all this stuff. Like, I just don't care. They set up a lot of fantastic ideas and premises in Horizon Zero Dawn. They then go on to answer almost all of those questions in Horizon Zero Dawn, and then grasp at straws for a whole game, that game being i.e. Forbidden West, in terms of ginning up more reasons for Aloy to keep fighting robot, monster, animal things, and all of that stuff. So I would rather a Horizon game that potentially allows the story and the narrative to take a back seat. Do I want to play a multiplayer game? Absolutely not. But if there's a potential for something where you could jump in and out with friends, or you could do this or you could do that, and because the game assumes that you can play with people, it doesn't have as big of an emphasis on the story. I don't know if that would make for an exciting third Horizon game. I feel like if you're going to do a proper third Horizon game, You probably need to put a bow on that story, whatever that story is, by the time it's done. But it's a really weird scenario where if I was Sony, if I had both of these games going at the time, I would potentially be more likely to lean into canceling the Horizon multiplayer game that Guerrilla was working on, because an MMORPG, that they call it an MMO because it is a massively multiplayer online role-playing game, right? Massively multiplayer online. Those things are going to mean you're going to run into people and you're going to play with friends and you're going to do this and you're going to do that. Now, in fairness, a lot of massively multiplayer online role-playing games allow you to play a lot of the content in that game by yourself, whether it's a story mode or whatever, right? So I'm just surprised that this feels so backwards, because if I was Sony, I would have leaned into potentially canceling the Horizon multiplayer game. I know nothing about these games. I don't know what state they're in. I couldn't compare apples to oranges, even if I wanted to, but just looking at where Guerrilla went with Horizon Forbidden West and, you know, whatever story they want to wrap up and the commitment to live service, I would have been more likely to say, fuck it, you're going to make a traditional Horizon game, whether it includes multiplayer or not, whatever, so that it kind of stands a little bit separately from the MMORPG that NCSoft was making. This is my 2 cents anyways. What else we got? Oh, right. Have you ever needed to create a third-party online gaming account, such as a Activision account or a Call of Duty account, which is probably the same thing at this point? Or have you ever had to make a Rockstar account or a Ubisoft account or an EA account? Have you ever had to make one of those accounts and thought to yourself, this is just fucking stupid. I don't want to do any of this. I don't give a shit about giving EA my email address. I could give a fuck less about providing my data to Ubisoft. I don't care. You ever thought to yourself, that's annoying and it should stop? Well, I agree. But you know who doesn't agree? Sega. Because Sega has officially launched the Sega account, which is an online profile that provides you with in-game bonuses. So what do you get? So what do you get, right? What is going to sweeten the deal for you, right? You're going to give, you know, Sega your fucking, you know, social security number. You're going to give it your mother's maiden name, whatever the fuck Sega wants, right? What do you get? Well, players who register will get a unique outfit for Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. So you give them your data, and when you buy, because they're not going to give you the game for free, but when you buy a Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii, they will give you an exclusive, unique outfit. Isn't that worth it? Isn't that so cool? Isn't that awesome that, you know, in order to run around in a fucking, like, you know, tie-dye shirt or whatever you're going to be doing in Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii, that in order to receive emails from Sega for the end of time, you get a sweet, you know, outfit? Now, if you ask Sega, they describe it as an online profile that gives you access to a host of benefits when playing Sega and Atlas titles and using their online services. According to Sega, players who create a Sega account will get access to exclusive bonuses and will be able to link their accounts over numerous platforms. Now, that's one of the things, right? That's the way this stuff works. It's almost like if we just use Ubisoft as an example. Ubisoft is like a second tier account, right? So you have your PlayStation account, or you have your Steam account, or you have your Nintendo account, or you have your Xbox account, whatever the hell you have, right? And then Ubisoft authenticates your ownership through that account, right? So once you do it once, you typically don't have to do it again, right? Because Ubisoft already knows that your PSN account is, you know, Blueberry Muffin Dog 420, whatever the fuck. So that next time you go to play Assassin's Creed Shadows, it's like, hey, you know, your Ubisoft account's already linked. Here's what you get, or whatever. They will also now here's where things get really fun. Sega also says that players who use the Sega account will also receive news on the latest Sega Atlas games events, and promotions. To encourage players to sign up for a Sega account, anyone who creates an account by March 7th will get an in-game bonus for Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii when it's released on February 21st. By linking their Sega account to a platform compatible with the game, they will receive a Kazuma Kiryu outfit DLC, allowing protagonist Goro Majima to dress as the initial main star of the Yakuza/Like a Dragon series. At the moment, players can link their accounts to 4 platform accounts such as Nintendo, PlayStation, Xbox, Steam, with Epic Games to follow. Although one game can currently be linked to a Sega account, which is the Japanese version of Phantasy Star Online 2 New Genesis version 2, given that Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii DLC offer, it seems likely that I'll be the next game to support it. Okay. All right, that's it. I'm done. I'm so sick of doing this. I thought we were done. I thought we were done. Like I honestly thought that everybody else had realized that this shit was stupid, or everyone realized that they were too late to the party. If you're not EA, if you're not Ubisoft, if you're not fucking whoever, you're done. That's it. Like you should have gotten in when everyone else was doing it. Cause I've had I think my Ubisoft account is like 17 years old. Like I've been doing this for a while, dog. Like PS3 era, we were doing this, right? Where was Sega then? Fucking around doing whatever. But now that Sega's a little hotter, they got that Yakuza, they got that Persona, they got that Hedgehog. Now all of a sudden they're thinking that they can just throw their weight around and make us create these bullshit accounts. Like I'm going to tell you right now that if you play Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii, you will be able to access a variety of costumes and outfits for your character to wear. Will it allow you to play as an entirely different, protagonist from the Yakuza series? No. But between the unlockable stuff in the game and the DLC and all the other bullshit they're going to sell you, the idea that you just need to give Sega your email so you can get access to this is just so dumb. In fact, other companies have started to realize that this is dumb. Now, in fairness, they already have my email, but just follow me here for just a moment, okay? 2K, 2K. 2K are the people that put out BioShock. They're the people that do some of the sports games like WWE and NBA and whatever the fuck, right? They, on Steam, when you went to launch a game on Steam and it was a 2K game, instead of launching the game, it launched a separate menu that showed you all your 2K account history and games, and then from there, you could launch the game. So you couldn't just click on Steam, hey, I want to play BioShock Remastered the way that you could with something else. They launched another thing because they knew you had a 2K account, and away you went. The 2K also put out the Borderlands games. Recently, as recent as November 25th, 2K put out a support article saying that we are removing the launcher from all of its games. We're talking like removing all of that stuff, right? Mafia Trilogy, Mafia, the Definitive Edition, Civilization 6, Civilization 5, XCOM 2, XCOM Chimera Squad, all that stuff removed, right? All of that stuff has been removed because they knew it was annoying. They knew it was bullshit, right? And what are the chances? Just hear me out. What are the chances that when you launch Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii, one of the first things it asks you when you get to the menu is, hey man, you thinking about making a Sega account? No. Why? So I can play as another guy? Well, who cares? If it was like, listen, I'm not saying I'm an expensive sellout, by no means. But if they said, hey man, we're going to give you 25% off Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii if you sign up now, 25%, pre-order the game, and we'll give you 25% off by signing up for an account. Now that is something. That is that's a deal, right? I'm not saying it's a great deal, but it's a better deal than what they're offering. I just find it so annoying, so obnoxious. Oh my God. I'm done. I don't want to make a Sega account. But then again, I've tried to play Phantasy Star Online 2. I don't know if I tried to play the Japanese version. So there is a possibility that I've already given Sega my email at some point, but I don't want to make a Sega account. I don't care. Sonic the Hedgehog 4. Let's talk about Sonic the Hedgehog 4. The fourth Sonic the Hedgehog movie. This is a really quick news story. Paramount has confirmed that the next Sonic movie will hit theaters in spring of 2027. As reported by Variety, Sonic the Hedgehog 3, which was released in December, is now officially the highest grossing installment in the franchise, which has now generated over $1 billion at the box office. Released in February of 2020, the first Sonic movie earned $148 million domestically and $319 million globally. Its sequel earned $148 million domestically and $319 million worldwide. Compare that to Sonic 3, which earned $218 million domestically and $422 million globally. They also brought in $180 million from home entertainment rentals and digital purchases. So guess what? They're not going to stop. Like, if you were like, man, I wonder what's going to be the next series to go on forever the way that Fast and Furious did. Well, guess what? Sonic is faster than any motherfucker in the Fast and Furious franchise. And if you know anything about Shadow the Hedgehog, he's pretty furious as well. He's an edgy hedgehog with guns. Anyways, I have yet to see one of these movies. I'm not against it. I just haven't had a chance to watch it yet. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we got more news. Stick around. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the podcast. I continue to be GnittWitt, and this continues to be the Glitch Report podcast. We got more news for you. EA is shutting down Origin on PC and Mac. Players will need to use the 64-bit operating system in order to access their games. This is a short one, but basically, as architecture for PCs change over time, PCs, for lack of a better word, do have generations in a way that consoles do. It's just they don't quite, they're not quite as short, right? Like 64-bit, operating systems can last a lot longer than, say, a PlayStation 5 to a PlayStation 6 would, right? Like, it can sometimes take 10 plus years or something like that to make a jump. So we've made the jump from 32 to 64-bit operating systems for some time now. And the Origin storage, speaking of, going back to what I was previously saying about online accounts, EA Origin is a PC storefront where you can buy games from EA as well as manage your save games and library and all that stuff, right? In some cases, you will play a EA game on something like Steam and it will still launch Origin or the EA app or whatever the fuck they're calling it this week underneath the game that you are running. So Origin is now going away pretty much entirely, and you will have to use a 64-bit operating system. Let me kind of break this down a little bit better for you. In a pair of statements posted on its EA Help support page, the publisher informs players that Origin will be terminated on April 17th for both PC and Mac users. A statement for PC users says the reason for the shutdown is that Microsoft has stopped supporting 32-bit software, while a similar statement for Mac users says the same about Apple. Both statements say players will have to download the EA app in order to keep playing their games, but assures that no data should be lost during the transition. Your account and games will transfer to the EA app. Log into the EA app with the same account you use for Origin. When you log in, any games you had on Origin will be ready to play. Games that list in-game hours in Origin will list the same hours in the EA app, Anything you've saved through Origin's cloud will also transfer over. However, the statement also notes that the EA app is only supported by 64-bit operating systems, meaning anyone with an older PC or Mac who still uses Origin to run older EA games will lose access to their library if they don't upgrade. Microsoft was still offering 32-bit versions of its Windows operating system until mid-2020. So that's kind of the timeline we're working with here. When it stopped distributing the 32-bit versions of Windows 10 and focused solely on the 64-bit version, you should also note that, so basically they were supporting the Windows 10 version, 32-bit, now it's only 64-bit version. The other thing to note is that Windows 11 only supports 64-bit architectures. And then for context, Apple released macOS Catalina in 2019. It was the first of its operating system releases to only support 64-bit applications. As such, anyone still running a 32-bit version of Windows 10 or older, or macOS Catalina or older, won't be able to play the EA app. Once Origin shuts down on April 17th, they will have to upgrade in order to keep playing their EA games. This is a weird news story. There is a PS5 dinosaur horror game coming out from a studio called Team Kill Media, which is an interesting name. They're working on a game called Code Violet, which is a third-person horror game that is supposed to be a spiritual successor to Dino Crisis. The game will be released exclusively for PS5 this July, according to its 4-person development team, which previously developed Kings of Lorne, Quantum Error, and Sun and Bone. Set in the 25th century, it sees players take on the role of Violet Sinclair, a girl plucked from the past who must unravel the mystery of the Aeon bioengineering complex as she avoids, hides, or fights against the creatures and dinosaurs who have overrun it. Well, that sounds all well and good. I'm looking at this trailer here. I'm watching the trailer. You can't see it because it's an audio podcast. I'm watching this trailer here. It's a CGI like story-based trailer from everything I saw. Anyways, they wrote it's a dinosaur, hunting, fighting game with a horror element similar to like a Resident Evil Dino Crisis, and it's coming exclusively to PS5. What could possibly go wrong? Team Kill Media wrote on Twitter saying that it has concerns about players making pornographic modifications, which means that it currently has no plans to bring the game to PC. Here's the quote. For those asking about a PC version of Code Violet, the reason we are not bringing it to PC is we do not want anyone modding vulgar versions of the main character as well as other characters in the game. We hold our voice actress and actors with high regard, as well as our artistic vision of the game and story, and reject any form of destroying that with sexual modifications. Making a joke of our art and possibly tarnishing the reputation of our voice actress and actors is not worth the extra money we can make. We are not against PC gamers or the PC platform. We are not against modders and some of the fun mods that they make. Some mods they make, but we are 100% against pornographic mods, period. Team Kill also said it would need additional manpower if it wanted to bring the game to Xbox in the future. We don't have the time or expertise to devote to the Xbox platform at this time. Yeah. Now for context, last year, Final Fantasy XVI producer Naoki Yoshida asked that fans refrain from installing or creating offensive or inappropriate mods when the game made the jump from PS5 to PC. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth director Naoki Hamaguchi also said something similar last month ahead of the game's PC release this week. So if you're not a PC gaming expert, you might be thinking to yourself, what the fuck is anyone talking about in this article? Let's try to break this down. with PC gaming being a lot more open in terms of being able to access the, files and folders of the art and things like that from the game, the raw components of the game in some way, you can do a lot of things to modify it, right? If there are character models you can kind of change, you can reconfigure parts of the environments or weapons or things like that. I'm not saying you can like fully remake the game. It's not like you can turn Fallout 4 into a Tetris like game with modifications, or if you did, it would be a metric fuck ton of work. But some people want to I don't know. Let me put it to you this way. I'll put it to you this way. Here's a great example of a mod. In the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, there are dragons in the game, and you can hear the dragons from the distance. When you hear a dragon, you're probably fucked. Somebody modified the dragons in Skyrim to be Macho Man Randy Savage. They were just like, what would be funny? Instead of you hearing the dragon cry out in the distance as it flies over to you, what if it was Macho Man Randy Savage instead? So fun stuff like that. Now, let's say that Macho Man Randy Savage was already in Skyrim for some reason, and you wanted to see Macho Man Randy Savage naked. And sorry, I'm now watching the Macho Man dragon. Anyways, they basically turned Macho Man into a really fucked up looking dragon, and you like with voice acting and all of that stuff. It's not like official Macho Man, but someone just took clips of Macho Man going, "Ooh yeah," and then a fucking dragon swoops in and it breathes fire and it goes, "Ooh yeah," and you're like, that's dumb. That's really fun. It's probably the only way to play Skyrim in my opinion. But anyways, with the modifications, you can get into all sorts of crazy shit, such as nudity and whatnot. The interesting thing that we've seen now with a lot of the voice actors in games physically playing their character is that the stakes are a little bit higher, right? So, for example, I'll give you an example. I'm not saying you should do this. I'm not saying anything, but like Elliot Page, is in, and Elliot Page and Willem Dafoe are in Beyond Two Souls. Their character models are them. They are their character models. And that game is on PC. If you wanted to try to modify the clothing options and stuff so you could see naked ass Willem Dafoe, and I mean, who wouldn't? I mean, come on, Willem Dafoe, goddamn sex pod of the century here. Long story short, if you wanted to see naked ass Willem Dafoe in Beyond Two Souls explicitly, and I mean explicitly, you would have to get the PC version of the game and modify it and do all sorts of stuff, right? They don't want people doing that in their games because they feel strongly about the art and direction. And I'm not saying they should or shouldn't feel that way. More power to them. However, has anyone ever listened when someone said, don't do something, right? You think about, your parents, right? They said, hey, don't hit your brother, or I don't know, don't eat too many cookies or whatever the fuck, right? And you know what you did? You did exactly what they told you not to do. So when I hear, for example, Final Fantasy 16 producer Naoki Yoshida ask fans to not create inappropriate mods, I bet that there are more inappropriate mods for Final Fantasy 16 now than if they had said nothing in the first place. Same thing with Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth. You best believe that my morbid curiosity when Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth comes out tomorrow is to start keeping my eye on inappropriate mods. I want, if you Google Cloud Strife, the Final Fantasy 7 character, you're going to see that Cloud Strife holds a huge sword. Like the sword is fucking bigger than him, right? It's just a huge, massive broadsword, right? And now I'm thinking, won't somebody please change Cloud Strife's huge Buster Sword from Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth into a giant dildo? I just want the biggest dick possible to be swinging around, hitting enemies with in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Modify that into the game, please. Somebody do that, okay? Make it be like it's Saints Row and put a giant veiny fucking dick as a sword in Final Fantasy VII. They said don't modify the game for inappropriate stuff, but whoever really listens. So I'm not saying that they can't stand up to what they believe in. I'm not saying they can't, hope to avoid situations like that. I just feel like when they tell people not to do that, that's usually what happens. And I look forward to this game either A, never coming to PC, or B, all the offensive and inappropriate mods that will eventually come to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. All right. We got some sobering news stories to wrap up this section of the news with, so bear with me here. And bear with me as I say that we're going to be reporting on an analyst kind of making some claims and spitballing some ideas. And there's every possibility that this analyst is talking out of their ass, much like how there's every possibility that I am talking out of my ass right now. Go look up the Ace Ventura scene where he is literally talking out of his ass, and then go look up the Ace Ventura scene where it looks like the rhino is pooping him, and you'll know what it means to talk out of an ass. But the point is that industry analyst says that there is hope that Grand Theft Auto 6 will cost as much as $100 at launch. Now, I want to say this before we get too ahead of ourselves. I am Canadian, and with the current U.S. Presidency and administration, I have a feeling that I will be paying $100 for video games sooner than later anyways. In fact, if I go over to Steam right now, if I go to Steam and I type in the word, if I type in Dynasty Warriors Origins is $91 before tax on PC. $91. We are already there, dog. I am already paying damn near $100 before tax for new video games. So this idea that we should be paying more is goddamn outrageous for a variety of reasons, right? But just gonna say this right at the top. Like Sid Meier's Civilization 7, it's coming out soon. That game is $90 Canadian before tax. Monster Hunter Wilds, $90 Canadian before tax. There is a fuck ton of stuff that is already incredibly expensive as it is. But let's maybe there's some, important things to learn about why a game should cost $100. Matthew Ball of Apillion has released his State of Video Gaming in 2025 report, which muses on how the video game industry could change in the forthcoming year. One large focus of the report is Grand Theft Auto 6, which will doubtlessly be the biggest video game release of the year, should it still make its planned 2025 release date. According to the report, he says there is hope within the video game industry that the publisher Take-Two will use the unprecedented excitement around Grand Theft Auto 6 in order to bump up the default price of the game to $100. It is believed that if Take-Two takes this step with Grand Theft Auto 6, a game that will sell incredibly well regardless of the price, then others could follow suit and potentially aid in recovering spiraling development costs. Now, for context, Grand Theft Auto publisher Take-Two, who also owns 2K, was one of the first companies to raise the price of games from $60 to $70 in 2020, using the transition to the next generation of consoles as an excuse. While it is likely that Grand Theft Auto 6 will release with a $100 version as part of the lineup of special editions, it is currently expected that the standard base game will be $70. Now let me just clarify something here. Let me clarify something here. Let me just pull up a game. Give me a game, any game. Okay, let's take Sid Meier's. Let's take Sid Meier's Civilization 7. We're going to use this as our base here, okay? Sid Meier's Civilization 7 is coming out February 11th. That's approximately 2 weeks. That game has a base price of $89.99 Canadian before tax. Okay? They are also selling 2 additional and this is 2K. This is the same people, some of the same people that are going to be putting out Grand Theft Auto 6 potentially later this year. So I'm going to use their own strategy as with Canadian pricing as our example, okay? Civilization 7 is $90 Canadian before tax. You can, however, buy a deluxe edition of Civilization 7, which will give you 5 days of early access for $130. It will also include some additional content for the game. Okay? You can also buy the Civilization 6 Founders Edition, which will also include 5 days of early access play, as well as additional content not found in the deluxe pack. And that version of the game is $167 Canadian before tax. Now, in fairness, if you know that you're going to be all in on Civilization 6, that is your game, that's going to be your big thing, you know what? If you really want to spend that money, go ahead. Now, in fairness, that you don't need to pre-order this stuff, because these versions of the game will all be readily available when it comes out February 11th. The difference is that if you wait for the release date of for the standard edition release date of Civilization 7, the standard release of Civilization 7, then you're just not going to get the early access, right? You're not going to get the 5 days of early access, right? You'll get everything else with the game, with the deluxe edition, with the Founders Edition, but they are already charging way more than $100 US. I don't know what the conversion rate from Canada to USD is, but $167 is a hell of a lot of money to put towards a game. Now, it's optional. You can do whatever you want, but we're kind of already there. Like, they already will sell you different versions of a game and let you spend almost whatever you want on the game at release. So this idea that, oh, they should charge base price for Grand Theft Auto 6, if anything, I think will prevent the maximum amount of sales of individual copies at launch. I think if you are going to be some super freak for Grand Theft Auto 6, then yeah, they will probably sell you a $160, $100 and whatever dollar edition of the game at launch. But I think the base price should be whatever it currently is. If we take a look at Assassin's Creed Shadows, no, okay, it's not there. We'll use Star Wars. Star Wars is $90 for the standard edition. The deluxe, this is Canadian prices. The Star Wars standard edition is $90. The deluxe edition is $120. The gold edition is $145, and the ultimate edition is $170. You don't need to increase the base cost of the game, because they will already sell you for double the price for whatever edition that you want. So this, I hope this insider and this analyst is wrong and they're talking out of their ass, because I think a GTA 6 that costs more than $70 USD is a disaster. And I don't want to pay any more in USD than I already do, considering that I am already paying damn near $100 before tax for new video games in Canada anyways. It's just fucking ridiculous. And just hear me out. They're going to sell additional content for the game anyway. So let's say you do pick up the $70 base version of Grand Theft Auto 6. Well, holy shit, I can't think of a game with more bullshit that you can spend additional money on than Grand Theft Auto, with the ability to spend money to get additional currency for the Grand Theft Auto online mode. So you can buy new cars or new weapons or new clothes or new whatever, right? I don't know if Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to sell additional single player content or what they're going to do. But I know that you'll be able to spend thousands of dollars in Grand Theft Auto 6 if you want to sometime after it comes out anyways. So you want to talk about ballooning budgets. If it was $100 US and there was nothing else that you could spend money on, everything came in the game by default for free, this would potentially be a different conversation. But that's not going to happen. We have already crossed over to this nightmare scenario where all of the most expensive AAA video games offer additional purchases that can easily double or triple the original cost of the game when you bought it at launch anyways. It's insane. There's no way to justify it, right? The industry has already agreed that they are going to, the AAA gaming industry has already agreed that they're going to try to make up additional money and all of this other stuff by selling additional content at launch and during the, updating of the game so that we don't have to increase the cost. Well, guess what? If they increase the cost, that shit would still exist anyway. So what the fuck is the point of increasing the cost of the game other than to prevent people who would have been willing to spend $70, no more, no less, at launch? It's ridiculous. It's insane. Oh, we got some more insane news stories. Speaking of insane, I don't know if you've heard about tariffs. Have you heard about these tariffs? Do you know about the tariffs that are going around these days? It's tariff season around these parts, let me tell you. February 1st or whatever the fuck, tariffs as far as the eye can see. Well, let's talk about one tariff. There is a Mexico tariff that could lead to fewer physical game releases and increased software prices. Physical and digital game prices could rise if the US imposes a 25% duty on imports from Mexico. Now, this is a proposed tariff from Mexico to the US, but let's hear what they have to say. This is all according to Matt Piscatella. Matt Piscatella is the executive director of video games at the market research firm Circana, who was reacting to the tariff threats made this week by the new United States President Donald Trump. After being sworn into office on Monday, Trump said his administration was reviewing existing trade deals with neighbors Canada and Mexico, as well as China. He said he was considering imposing a 25% duty on imports from Canada and Mexico on February 1st over illegal immigration and fentanyl crossing into the United States, as reported by Reuters. Excuse me, I'm getting choked up here because this is so fucking stupid. Anyways, with a 25% tariff on imports from Mexico on the way, I can see a sharp downtick in the number of disc-based games that get released physically in the United States, as much of that production infrastructure is in Mexico. If disc-based games do get made, the analyst said he expects increased prices for both physical and digital titles. I would, were this to happen, anticipate digital MSRPs to increase to remain at price parity with physical, but who knows? In any case, none of this is good for the physical video game market. Basically saying that the EAs of the world, the 2Ks, the whatever, they wouldn't like the idea that physical games would cost 25%. What little physical games still exist today, they don't like the idea that a physical game would cost 25% more than the digital game that you can just download and play. So, in a way, you might get your $100 copy of Grand Theft Auto 6 anyways if if Donald Trump has anything to say about it. Now, Matt Piscatella also said that he expects the newly revealed Nintendo Switch 2 to sell over 4 million units this year alone in the United States. So, I mean, that could affect the Nintendo Switch 2 as well, right? They're trying to launch a console. It's, oh God, I don't want to talk about politics. I would rather just turn off my brain, take the brain out of my head, throw it into a trash compactor, and then use what little brain and physical motor skills I had left to activate that garbage compactor and squish that brain into oblivion and then die, then talk about politics. I don't want to do it. I don't want to talk about Donald Trump. I don't want to talk about the fucking US president. In this context anyways. If you want to talk about Harrison Ford as US president in not just Air Force One, but Captain America, I'm all there. You want to talk about fake US presidents? I'm all there, because the fake US presidents, even at their worst, are better than the best US president that has ever actually existed. Here I am ranting about politics, but goddamn, this is disastrous, or potentially disastrous, in a way that I don't think even fucking Trump supporters saw coming. Because you know what? I bet Donald Trump supporters love shooting guns in violent video games, or at least some of them do. And the idea that they're going to pay 25% more for their physical copy of Grand Theft Auto 6, whew, they got another thing coming. But hey, good news. Everything is bad. So here's long story short. Everything is bad, and it's probably only going to get worse. That's the news story. I got one final news story for you, though. The Game Developers Conference happened recently. There was a survey that was put out at GDC stating that 11% of game developers surveyed at the Game Developers Conference were laid off in the past year. And research suggests that 41% of developers have been impacted by job cuts over the past 12 months. All right, so here's what we got. GDC's latest annual State of the Game Industry survey, which asked over 3,000 game developers across the indie and AAA studios questions about their work, was published on Tuesday. So indie and AAA studios were asked questions about their work, and that was published on Tuesday. About 11% of the respondents reported being laid off in the last 12 months, which was up 7% in the last year's survey. And around 41% of the respondents said they had been impacted by layoffs, up from 35% in GDC's report from 2024. Now, 29% said they had colleagues who lost their jobs, which was up from 17% a year earlier, while 18% said staff in other teams or departments were laid off, which was up from 11%. In addition, 4% said their studios were completely shut down over the past year. The top 3 reasons companies gave for making layoffs were restructuring, which was 22%, declining in revenue, 18%, and market shifts / industry trends, which was 15%. 43% of participants said they hadn't been laid off at their companies, which was down from 43% the previous year. Now, game developer Farhan Noor has been tracking industry job cuts on videogamelayoffs.com, which estimates that around 14,600 workers were laid off in 2024, up from a total of 10,500 in 2023 and 8,500 in 2022. Game companies reportedly impacted by layoffs so far this year include Wargaming USA, Highwire Games, Netmarble, Toadman Interactive, Free Jam, Piranha Games, Counterplay Games, Microsoft, Splash Damage, and Jar of Sparks. If we take a look at 2025, what do we got so far for 2025? It's not that high. So far, it's not that high. We also don't know the details of around a lot of this stuff, but it's not great. It's not great out there. We'll take a final break and we'll come back, talk about the games that I've been playing. Stick around. We'll be right back. Welcome back from our final break. I am finally GnittWitt, and we are finally going to talk about some damn video games that I have been playing. But we're actually going to start by talking about video games that I am no longer playing. I put a bow on Horizon Zero Dawn Remastered. I played through Horizon Zero Dawn Remastered. I was going to get all of the trophies in that game now that the trophies are available on PC. I got pretty damn close, but no cigar. That being said, really enjoyed my time with that game. That game looks absolutely gorgeous on PC. The remastered version looks absolutely gorgeous, which is saying something because even the PC version of that game looks absolutely gorgeous. I still quite enjoy the story and the characters in that game, despite where things go in the second game. And the combat and the gameplay hold up really well. That open world design holds up really well. I will admit that I prefer the gameplay of Forbidden West and some of the updates and changes that they made along the way. But Zero Dawn Remastered is a great game. I ended up putting about 30-ish hours into that game. And that was a game that originally came out. The remastered version originally came out late last year. And I think it was around the time that Final Fantasy 16 was coming out. So there was kind of a lot going on at the time, but I'm glad I kind of put my head down and just played through that game because it is still a blast. Easily my preferred game compared to Horizon Forbidden West, excuse me. But yeah, you know what? If they listen, I'll say it right now. If they put trophies in Forbidden West, I would, in a heartbeat, go back and play through Forbidden West because I enjoy the gameplay of that game despite that story. But yeah, hey, 2 thumbs up for Zero Dawn Remastered. Doesn't matter if you play the complete edition or the original edition, whatever version of Zero Dawn you have the chance to play, you should play that game because it's really awesome. Speaking of games that I am no longer playing, I have officially dropped and am no longer playing Final Fantasy 16. I just don't have the patience for the way that game tells its story, with the way that so much filler and bullshit is put into the main story of that game that really screws up a lot of the pacing of that story. You go through a huge boss battle, a huge cinematic, crazy, over-the-top action moment, and then it feels like mere minutes later, you are running around like a chicken with your head cut off, doing inconsequential bullshit for characters that you just met that don't seem important, that really breaks up the flow of that game. Which is funny because I just read through the PC Gamer review of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth this morning, excuse me. I read through that Wednesday morning. I read through the review for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth on PC Gamer, and they were very explicit, like that Final Fantasy VII Rebirth has a story that doesn't really go a lot of places and is filled with a lot of filler and bullshit and side content. The only difference is that I kind of knew that going into Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, that, with it being the middle chapter of a trilogy that probably didn't need to be a trilogy in the first place, that there was going to be a lot of side content, a lot of bloat, a lot of open world stuff. But the difference is that I might be able to avoid, and I don't know, like, hey, maybe next week I'm going to come back and I'll be like, God damn it, Final Fantasy, you've done it again. But in my defense, there is the possibility that when I, get to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, that I won't have to be so worried about the bloat because it's side content and it's stuff that can potentially be easily ignorable, right? If we go to, just for example, just a rough idea, how long to beat Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. How long to beat Final Fantasy VII Rebirth? Well, according to howlongtobeat.com, oh boy. Oh shit. Okay, well, fuck me. Okay, well, I guess I'm going to be playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth for the next year, because if you leisurely play through just the main story of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, you are looking at about 65 hours. And if you leisurely play through the main game plus some extra side content, you are looking at 165 hours. Fuck. Okay, well, great. I hope you enjoy me talking about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth for the next 6 months, because I don't know what else I'm going to do except play through that game. And I know that the game is open world and all this other crazy shit. I believe it is 3 big open zones. I believe it's not like full on open world. It's like 3 separate open world zones, but I couldn't tell you like how big each zone is and all that stuff. Tell you what, it looks like I'm looking at a map right now on IGN of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and it's open world, and it looks pretty fucking big. But like I said, I couldn't, it's kind of one of those things where you're gonna have to like look at it yourself. It's not like you can eyeball it with everything kind of being separate and spread out. But hey, great. I guess I should have known, should have expected the worst when it comes to the bloat and stuff in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Especially knowing what I know now about Final Fantasy 16, excuse me. But it doesn't matter. I'm ready to go. And also, like, I think that sort of bloat, that sort of additional side content, that meandering, side stories and stuff, I'm okay with in the context of an open world game, because like I said, I can ignore a lot of that stuff, right? I didn't even end up doing all the side content in Horizon Zero Dawn, and that was the whole point of getting the trophy, was to do all that stuff anyway. So like, I'm more than willing to walk away from a game that doesn't respect my time, whether it is a linear game or it's an open world game. I just find that it's a little bit easier to ignore that stuff when it is an open world game. But it doesn't matter, because I am incredibly excited to play Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. We're out of Midgar. We're going and we're hitting the road, and it's open world, and I'm excited to do all that stuff. I'm very excited to see how that game looks, how that game plays, and everything and anything in between. Like, don't get me wrong. I know that I'm probably about to enter a huge polar vortex of time that I may never return from. Speaking of David Lynch, like this idea of like, I don't know, in the future and the past, I will always be playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth because it never fucking ends. But I am excited nonetheless to play through that. I also fired up just really briefly. I don't know. I think I was entering like a food. I ate too much pizza last night, as one tends to do. And I found myself entering a food coma. But during that time, I was playing a little bit of the video game LA Noire. It only makes sense considering my appreciation for the noir and the neo-noir that is work by David Lynch and other people. So it only makes sense to fire up LA Noire. I did not get very far in that game. I think I might just slowly pick at that game. Like, I might do a crime scene, like a case every now and then, and just slowly pick at that game throughout the year. But LA Noire does not look amazing. It does not hold up incredibly well from a gameplay and a graphics perspective. Like even in the first level, like I was just stumbling across clues, and if I hadn't like noticed the cue or the glint or the icon that appears on screen or the sound, it can sometimes be a little easy to miss some of the clues in the environment. But like I said, you can turn on stuff that like a loud noise shows, and a loud noise happens every time you walk across a clue, or a fucking magnifying glass shows up on screen whenever you see something. So like it almost gets away from like kind of taking in the environment naturally and kind of scouring the crime scenes and stuff like that naturally. But if it means not missing out on a clue, I'd rather not miss out on a clue. So I'm going to probably be picking away at that over time anyways. The other thing I'll mention is that I had my Fallout New Vegas New Year New Vegas live stream cut short last week because the game crashed on me. So I'm probably gonna, after this podcast is over, I'm probably gonna course correct and just record the other half of the video, because the videos are typically about 2 hours long. So I'm probably gonna record half of that now after we're done recording this podcast. It won't be live. And then Friday we'll be back live for the next full part of New Year New Vegas Fallout New Vegas playthrough. So if you're watching the live stream and it cut short. I apologize. I am going to go record about another hour's worth of gameplay because it's not up on YouTube. And if you just if I just put up the other half, next week it'll be short, and I'm just going to course correct as I get the chance. But next week, we're going to talk about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Tomorrow, on Thursday, is also the Xbox Developer Direct. So next week's show will feature a lot of Final Fantasy VII and a lot of the Xbox Developer Direct conference, where I think they're already starting to leak out like the potential release date for Doom: The Dark Ages and stuff like that. So stuff's already leaking, which makes sense. This is a leaky industry after all. But we'll talk all about that stuff, and maybe we'll have new Nintendo leaks to talk about next week. So next week, just to clarify, next week we got Final Fantasy VII Rebirth talk, potentially Nintendo leaks, and a hell of a lot of Microsoft news to discuss next week. So come on back for that, for another edition of the Glitch Report podcast. I have been GnittWitt. You can find everything that I do over at my Linktree, linktree.com/GnittWitt. It'll take you to Threads and Blue Sky and YouTube and Instagram and TikTok and all that stuff in one convenient location. All right. Stay safe out there. Stay warm. Play some gosh darn video games if you get the chance. And we'll see you all next week. I've been GnittWitt. This has been the Glitch Report podcast. Take it easy.